Hello, and welcome to Past Your Bedtime. My name's Bev. If you pick up any of the farming publications or read industry articles online, you can hardly look at the ag sector without coming across stories of farmers branching out. Whether it's selling produce straight to customers through farm shops and vending machines or online, setting up glamping sites, or turning outbuildings into wedding venues, learning spaces, or even paddle courts, diversification discussions are everywhere. Figuring out how to do any one of these things can feel pretty daunting, not to mention time-consuming, especially when it often lands on the very people who are already stretched and juggling with all the usual day-to-day demands of running a farm. So it's no surprise that more farmers than ever are looking for support with marketing, planning regulations, and even media training. My guest today is exactly the sort of person you'd want in your corner when thinking through ideas like these. Growing up in the countryside with mud in her blood, as she puts it, Ali Mitchell is a country girl at heart. A quick stroll through her social media feed is all you need to see she spends her time almost entirely outdoors, dog by her side, supporting local events, visiting farmers, or maintaining her passion for horses. Here we talk about some of the farm diversification projects she's been involved in. And we also touch on the isolation felt by many farmers and how community actions are so vital when it comes to addressing that. I asked her first of all where it was that she grew up.
I'm a Hampshire lass, and until I was 8 years old, I was near the coast in Hamble. And then through circumstances with my mother's mother, she had retired back to Northern Ireland. She originally had left, farmer's daughter, 3 brothers, and it was very evident she was going to be left at home to look after the farm and look after the brothers and probably find a local farmer to marry herself, the usual scenario. And she thought, no, that's not for me. So she jumped on a boat from Newry to Heysham and then went to Lancaster and trained as a nurse. And this is, you're talking 1920s.
Right.
And so very brave of her to have done that. And then, she settled in England and had her family. And of course, when she retired, she had land that she'd inherited and wanted to build on and move to Northern Ireland. So she moved in 72. And we were then sort of asked, one of us, of the 3 daughters, my mum and her 2 sisters, can you come and look after us, sort of thing. And so we moved in 76 at the height of the Troubles.
Was the
Which
farm
was
operational then?
No. She only had the land. So she'd
Right.
built a bungalow and we had then land that we then had various animals as I was growing up. There was the big carrot dangled was, oh, if we come over, then Ali can have a pony. And that was for me, I'd already started riding in England. So yeah, ponies came on the scene thick and fast over the years. And, I spent most of my childhood running feral amongst the fields with all the neighbouring kids and cousins and things like that, and literally wild. The days of no mobile phone, and I remember being cut off by the snow, and the local chap down the road had a digger, so that was the way people got up and down the lane on top of like 6-foot drifts of snow. There was one big dump of snow for about 10 days. We didn't go to school. My mum and dad sat on the front bucket of the digger going into town to get milk for some neighbour that had a young child and needed more milk, and everything had run out, and it was quite bizarre. But yeah, we used to play in the fields just all hours,
Isn't
go
it, isn't it
riding on.
wild though?
Yeah,
We're
go,
the same age, and
yeah,
when you say 1976, when I think of the drought
yes.
that summer.
Well, that was the
But
year we moved, when the drought, it was like, I remember my parents selling their house and the garden was brown. It wasn't green, because everything, there was the hose pipe ban and all sorts.
yeah,
And it was crazy, and moving to Northern Ireland was obviously quite an adjustment.
yeah,
I remember growing up and seeing Chinook helicopters flying above, dangling Land Rovers from the Chinook, because they were then, it was safer for them to go to a road checkpoint, hanging
yeah.
dropping the Land Rover down rather than going along the road, because that's obviously booby trap bombs, etc. And back then there was no fireworks or anything like that in Northern Ireland growing up, because it was very much banned because of the Troubles. And I remember looking out the window at night, 6 miles to our local town, Armagh, watching things in flames and seeing explosions and wondering which supermarket they'd blown up this weekend, sort of thing. And it, it was a very flippant sort of way of looking at it as a child, because you were very innocent. It was like, oh, is it Welworths or is it this such and such a shop this week? And
Yeah.
all the town was barricaded with concrete, 40-gallon barrels and things like that, and posts to stop people driving up through the town to drop an incendiary. And but we were oblivious because we were 6 miles from it all. Okay, we saw the odd road checkpoint, but as kids growing up, we were very much, I suppose, shielded from it. And I suppose in modern day times, it might be the same elsewhere in other countries where they're not really at the front line of it all. So yeah, we spent most of our days riding on ponies, gathering potatoes for the neighbouring farm, 50p a bucket at harvest time, and being caked in mud and getting hosed off at the back door. Very feral, playing with dried out cow pats as frisbees, which was a bit weird. But, you think back at it, it was all very much innocent fun,
I love the line you said, I've got mud in my blood.
Yeah, I have got mud in my blood for sure. I think if you cut me down the middle, it's got mud and probably the smell of horses, because that's how I grew up. Very much, always, like, I didn't ride a bike much as a kid, and I'm not very confident on a bike to this day, because I think I spent most of it on 4 legs rather than 2 wheels as a child. And it was always, I remember riding my pony to primary school one day because the bus wasn't working. So I thought I'd just take the pony, and I left him in the field next door, which happened to be a graveyard. He was happy. So that was fun. But yeah, I've, the local guy that was down the road from us, he was an old eccentric chap. He didn't have mains electricity or anything. He had his own little generator and water that came up from the brae down the road. And he never had any family. So we very much helped him because he wasn't fit to do a lot of it himself. And age 12, he taught me how to drive a tractor. I don't know how I reached the pedals because I was very little. But for him, if he was doing hay, it was easier for me to drive the little old Massey Ferguson and the trailer on the back, and he could then physically lift the bales because I wasn't strong enough to lift, the big bales that he was chucking on the back. And we would do the same for, maybe moving cattle from one field to the other. It was crazy. You wouldn't do it now. And so, if he had a calf that needed hand reared, it would come up to us and we'd look after it. And I was always very hands-on, and also with the horses, chap down the road. I remember we used to go and play rodeo on the bullocks that were in the shed, it's crazy stuff. Health and safety gone mad now, but yeah, back then
Did your sisters love it as well? Did they?
My sister wasn't really as much involved with it all as I was, but yeah, we were pretty wild.
But like I say, it's my living memory as well. So we're about a year between us in age, and it just feels, I actually feel really old saying it now, but it's like a world away.
Yeah.
How life was experienced back in the 70s, and I kind of feel for kids growing up today. I shouldn't, it's a bit patronizing, but you do feel a bit like some kids are missing out completely their childhood.
Yeah, a bit like the whole nanny state, or they must stay clean, and the whole obsession was being completely sterile almost. And I think, I wasn't a really sickly child or anything like that. And I think it's probably because you were exposed to so many germs and dirt, and you just cracked on and did it. I remember in haymaking time standing at the back door, and my mum used to have to pick the ticks off us because we'd been sort of in amongst the hay, and it was just rife. But that's, I don't know, we weren't crying about it. It was just, oh well, I've got 3 down this leg, and can you deal with them, sort of thing. It was like, he's off, exactly. I can go out again, sort of thing.
So how long did you stay over there?
I stayed there until 92, and then I moved back to the UK when I qualified as a nurse, and I was in nursing for a short time before moving into pharmaceutical industry, and I was in sales and marketing for a few years. Then I did various things, and I had a career break for children. And then whilst I was living down in Wiltshire in lockdown, I think I was immersed in farming again, because I rented a little farm cottage on an estate down there. And I think the community around me in that time was like something else I'd never experienced after living in sort of suburbia in Surrey for 15 odd years and not experienced any sense of community whatsoever. And moving to rural Wiltshire, it really highlighted to me that there are communities in England like I had when I grew up.
Yeah, I know exactly
in Northern Ireland, very much close knit. Everybody helped each other. And whether it was the situation we found ourselves in COVID, but, everybody was shopping for people that were shielding and delivering medicines from the GP and all of that sort of thing. Then my wife and I moved to Hampshire and we bought a house in East Meon, and we've not looked back. It's just, again, the most amazing community that I have experienced. It's a very unique village, East Meon, and South Downs I'm very fortunate to live in such a beautiful part of the country. And after doing several jobs when we first moved here, and I just thought, no, it's just not for me anymore. I want to actually work for myself. And I think the community around me and sort of feeling like I was almost home again, the feeling that I had growing up as a child, I thought I can put all the skills that I've got from years of working in sales and marketing, business development type roles across various industries and transfer those into helping rural businesses and diversified farms. So that's why I refocused the business last year to actually do that, and rebranded myself to actually go out there and seek that type of business, which has really, really worked for me. I'm building that reputation locally and beyond. I've just recently done some work for a CIC down in Devon, they're trying to relocate and I suppose repurpose people when they come out from young veterans working in the military jobs, and they are trying to get them jobs within agriculture. So I did a report on that, trying to, I suppose, talent match and skill match people from various roles within the armed forces to then transfer those skills into agricultural jobs. So yeah, everything is very varied in what I offer and what I do. So it could be doing a real power hour once a month with somebody, just helping them with strategy that need that extra eyes on. If they may be just working on their own on a farm and they need somebody extra to come in and help them look at a vision going forward to improve what they have, or help them on that diversification pathway. One of the biggest sort of roles that I have, I suppose, and I do about 40 hours for a farm that's local to me outside the village, and they're probably one of the most, I'd say, diversified farms that we have in the south of England. He's been established now 30-40 years of doing other things other than just dairy and arable. They've got a fly fishery. They've also got clay shoot. They do a lot of corporate training and learning and development stuff within their long barn. And I have been helping them in all manner of different marketing aspects since August of last year, and of which coming up with new ideas to get bums on seats in their barn for different events that they wouldn't already have those people coming to the site. So I've come up with the idea of book launches. People, obviously, when they sign a book deal, part of that obligation with the publisher is to be able to go to different places for the hardback or the paperback, and they have to give an evening with type talk or book signings, and they like to have different locations. And sometimes if it's a book that's associated with a rural subject matter, it's quite useful to have it maybe on a farm like the one I've been working with. So we had Mandy Hickson, the first female fighter jet pilot, in January, which is a great success. And in July, I've got Baroness Minette Batters coming, because obviously she's launching her wonderful, I'm very privileged, I've already read it on a preview, her memoir, Harvest.
Yeah.
And
that's quite a coup.
That is quite a coup, and I'm very proud of that. And I'm very excited that she's coming to Meon Valley and to Meon Springs as a farm. So that, for me, that is a great thing. And the interest is really there. And we're hoping it's going to be a nice sellout in July. And
if I was closer, I would be there.
Yes, much looking forward to hear her speak. And hopefully in September, I've also got a very key figure in the world of broadcasting, and she wrote her novel last year, and it'll be her paperback coming out. And fingers crossed, we're very excited that maybe Claire Balding is coming. So that is all in the pipeline.
I spotted you fangirling her at Goodwood.
Oh, I met her yesterday, and we had a great chat about book launches yesterday. So it was a wonderful, wonderful event. And that was a perfect example that I think, you've got a landed country estate that is always looking, it's obviously not, it's privately owned, it's not a National Trust property or anything.
Yeah.
and they are looking after their land in a very responsible way. It's organically farmed, but also they've diversified with events, obviously, over the years. As well as the farm, they've got the race course for the racing. They've also got the motor circuit, which is, you know, synonymous with British racing. However, they've been looking for many years other ways of doing things to get people to come, and this event is like the Glastonbury for dogs, and it was a fantastic day out.
I used to live just down the road from it, about 8 miles away from Goodwood, and I remember the first year so it's probably been running 5 years, I think.
Yeah, I would imagine so. It was our first year of going.
I was at the kennels for a meeting, so we always used to sort of use that as a base, and they were getting all the marquees up and that ahead of it. So yeah, it would have been about that time. But yeah, I'm far away from that now. But it's an interesting idea. I think one that different uses of the properties on farm is coming into its own. And I think I saw you post this morning about somebody else's post that related to how to go about converting unused properties, barns or whatever, on farm to meet the needs of, I think it was in relation to the paddle sport.
Yeah, it was a very good article. I think the chap's called Guy French.
Guy French,
yeah, he does a lot of advice for obviously planning applications, etc. And I think that's really important to consider when anybody is thinking of diversifying, is making sure that everything they are choosing to go down the route of, that they need to make sure that they've got the right legal permissions to do so, because retrospectively you don't want to have to go down and pull the building down.
Also taking advantage of some of the funding that's available.
Yeah, absolutely, because unbeknownst to them, you know, certain things might actually be given a grant, etc. So it's making sure that you know exactly what is on offer, but also what the permissions are as well, and then putting that into your plan and the business plan ahead. You know, there's a lot of people out there that have got unused barns that could be used, and if they've got good access, that's maybe a route to go down. But I think a lot of farms out there are struggling at the moment, and if they haven't already diversified, they're certainly looking at ways of doing that. And I think that's where I potentially come in to help them, either whether it's in the early stages of putting things together for permission, but purely from my point of view, it would be more from the marketing perspective and thinking about how you're going to brand yourself. Maybe if it was, say, for instance, a farm shop or something like that, or you've got a food product within the farm that you want to actually showcase and make it a real true artisan product. And I think that, to me, is where my passion lies. I'm a real foodie. Like 95% of my freezer is actually full of product, and from the South Downs and into Dorset as well. We've got family connections down there, and I'm really passionate about supporting local suppliers. So I'm always striving to seek out potential clients within the food markets as well, because I think we live in a very affluent area in terms of the demographic here. And I think those people should be actually very responsible in how they eat and what they choose to eat as well. So, you know, they need to support the local farmers. It makes me so angry when I go into supermarkets and see that we've got a lot of produce from abroad. And many years ago, we were very seasonal eaters. We didn't eat strawberries in January. We'd have only had them in August and some holidays. That was our big treat as kids, to have strawberries, because it was the season. And so if you're eating tasteless strawberries in January, you're wondering why they don't taste or smell like strawberries, then there is a reason for it. They probably come out of cold storage and been flown how many thousands of miles.
Yeah, the topic comes up time and time again, and I sense there's a shift. The more it is discussed now, and clearly the supermarkets have cottoned onto it, and they're trying to do their bit to.
I think it's also the responsibility, though, not just of supermarkets, but also pubs and restaurants as well, because obviously supermarkets have to show their provenance with the labelling, etc. And some pubs and restaurants will have it on their menu. You know, we have sourced our menu between 15 to 20 miles from the location of the restaurant or the pub, but some don't. And you could order beef or you could order pork, and you have no idea, has that come from a supermarket? Has it come from cash and carry, or in from abroad? Who knows the provenance of that? And that almost makes me hesitate going out to eat, because if I eat at home and I cook myself and I'm not a half bad cook, I don't think when you go out to a pub, sometimes you lose a bit of faith and confidence, and you're very picky what you choose on the menu because of your lack of faith of where it's come from. We were in Scotland recently on holiday, and I'd ordered Cullen skink, which I absolutely love, and some homemade sourdough bread. And it was a very sort of what I would have called an authentic sort of Scottish pub. We were near the Trossachs, and along came Lurpak butter with the bread. And I thought, hang on a minute. We are in the Highlands of Scotland. You've got all this beautiful produce and stuff around you, and yet
Yeah.
we're sitting here being offered Danish butter in Scotland.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think for
it
some,
makes me a bit
I guess
angry.
it's not been pointed out to them what a unique selling point it could be to
No.
do that. My shout out to my local butcher, but now there's nothing in my village at all, not even a post office. So when I say my local butcher, what we're talking 4 or 5 miles up the road.
Yeah.
Anyway, I should name them Stokesley Butchers, although they're not in Stokesley, they're in Great Ayton. But I wanted lamb for a particular meal a few weeks ago. And so I asked whatever it was, shoulder of lamb. He didn't volunteer the information, but I, being submersed in this topic now, said, oh, where did the lamb come from? And he said Kildale, which is the village that I live in. So it was possibly one of the sheep that I looked out at not long beforehand. But I just, in terms of food miles, 3 or 4 miles up the road, you can't get
Yeah.
better than that.
No.
But it wasn't obvious that they should even shout about the fact that the lamb was only, clearly it would have gone to an abattoir and then to the butchers, so there's some extra miles there. But to know that I was really eating local lamb.
Yeah, and knowing that it's had a good life. I buy predominantly my lamb from Meonside Farm, which is just up the road from us. Young Will and Ollie, that they look after their sheep particularly well, and I like to support the local farmers and buying product straight from the farm. And I think we need to make more of that in this country, and encouraging people to do it within a village. And I think it's our responsibility going forward. We don't want to get ourselves in a situation where we're relying on so many other countries or people for our food. And it really makes me proud when I see what they produce, and that it tastes so amazing as well. And, it's literally less than a mile up the road from where I live. I'm constantly looking out for new suppliers of local products, and I've got chap in the village as well who's got the right to cull the wild deer on an estate locally. So Richard supplies us the venison, and it's a very healthy meat, and I think we should probably eat a lot more venison in our diet because it's so healthy for us. The low fat content, high protein, and it's a good meat to have. It makes a very nice chili with the venison mince. So to me, that is very key and important, and I'm quite passionate about when I'm talking with farms about agri-tourism, to showcase some local products within maybe their cafe, or what they may offer in a goodie pack to the guests when they're in glamping sites and things like that. I think that's really important to help showcase what we've got on offer in our local area.
Now, clearly you're talking to businesses that are looking for some support, but do you get any pushback amongst farmers who either because they just don't know how to go about it, or they resist this sort of intrusion into the farm of the great unwashed great British public? Is that ever a thing for you?
I think if they've got that view, then they probably aren't looking at a view of potentially agri-tourism within their farm setup. They might think about diversifying in other ways to increase their revenue. So I think you have to be of a certain mindset to think Joe Public is going to come on my land. And the farms that I have come across that do open up themselves towards agri-tourism are usually very welcoming and are almost very proud to show off what they have. Farm tours sometimes get sort of brought into what they offer as well. And that really helps, in an educational way as well, especially with children that maybe come down from, I don't know, London to stay, when they've never probably seen where their milk comes from, or where the wheat comes to make bread and things like that. And for them to see that in nature is, I think, really, really important. I've just taken on a new client for agricultural contractor, and that's going to be a soft start because money's tight. If you think about agricultural contractors, they have a huge amount of outlay. Sometimes a lot of their equipment that they buy is on finance. Then they have insurance for the machinery, but they've also got insurance for the users of the machinery. So their overheads are really high, but they still need to promote themselves. So, that's where I'll come in with advice and ways of potentially where they need to be targeting their customers and try and open up new channels of business. I'm constantly networking, trying to meet new people, work quite hard on LinkedIn. Last February, I went and had a stand at the Isle of Wight Farming Conference because it's only over the pond from us, and met some very enterprising farms over there. But what it also did is open up strong links with some of the mainland people that came over to that, who were involved with, say, Farming Community Network, a wonderful charity that we have in British Isles, and also members of the NFU who are very passionate about obviously helping and engaging the farmers over in the Isle of Wight as well as Hampshire as well. So they've been very helpful, and some really useful links also with land-based, rural lawyers who are doing the deals of land sales or probate and rural property, etc. And they've been great connections for me and opened up a few doors as well, and sort of work my network around those people, because they're always thinking, well, we can link up together. We're going in and doing a big sale. These people are buying a landed estate and wanting to do X, Y, and Z, and they're going to want somebody to come in and have a chat with them about their marketing. So
help understand that. I think it's just a phenomenal industry. I've found it just so helpful. The connections that I've built in a short space of time, it feels unreal compared to the industry that I came from. Maybe because I had a solid network in my previous job, but it's refreshing stepping into another sector completely from ground zero and then building that out, and just little connections just keep on happening where so-and-so's mentioned a name and then up it pops the next day as a connection.
Absolutely.
And the variety of ways in which the industry supports itself through that collaboration is eye-opening, and I'm disappointed that it wasn't obvious 20-30 years ago for me, or when I was at school as a careers option.
Absolutely. I feel exactly the same, in the sense that, especially recently, having done the analysis for agricultural opportunities for young military veterans for the CIC down in Devon, it highlighted to me the amount of career opportunities there are out there. And when I was growing up, I was so passionate about the land, the nature, animals. And when I had careers advice at I would say a very narrow thinking all girls school, you were either going to be, if you were a bright girl, you were going to be a lawyer or a doctor. If you liked animals, then you might be a vet. But that was it, and then down from that, it would have been a nurse or a secretary, or career opportunities were very, very limited. And I remember being told by the teachers at school, well, you're not bright enough to be a vet, so you'll have to think of something else, because I wanted to work with animals, and it was just very, very, very tunnel visioned. And I think now, if you look at the number of opportunities that certainly women are involved within agriculture, not just hands-on farming, but agronomists, people who are working as land agents, really bright women that have gone into law but have specialised in rural property because that's their passion. And, I think it's wonderful that there are many, many opportunities now for everybody, not just women, but men and women who not necessarily are in a farm or in a potential opportunity to inherit a farm from parents or whatever, but still want to work within agriculture. There are lots and lots of opportunities out there. And that is from people who want to have more of a vocational hands-on career, whether that they become a specialist in, I don't know, machinery, shearing, all sorts of hands-on jobs, or an academic. And you think about the research that goes on behind the scenes in, soil structure, nutrition, that type of thing. Really, really bright people out there that are contributing to the agricultural setup. that aren't hands-on on a farm, but they are really part of that cog of a very big wheel and complete the jigsaw of what makes up agriculture
Yeah.
and be a success in this country.
So what do you think the future looks like in farming particularly? I'm blessed being up in Yorkshire with a lot of groups and societies and conversation and collaboration going on. But down on the southeast, what does it look like to you?
Oh, mixed. I think some days if you were to speak to some farmers and say, how happy are you on a 1 to 10 basis? Some days they're at a 7, some days they might be at a 4. It just depends. And I think what I see from, I suppose, almost from outside in, although I'm sort of semi-involved, I see farmers getting more collaborative towards each other than they ever were maybe before, because of the kickback they've had politically. And I'm certainly not going to get into political conversation regards to inheritance tax or funding or anything like that. But I think because of the resistance that farmers have had over the years, they maybe are that bit more there for each other. And I certainly found that out. And it was very evident in the keynote speech I had from Jude McCann at the Isle of Wight Farming Conference last February. An amazing CEO for that organisation, and the passion that he has for everybody looking out for each other, and looking after the mental health of each other as well, and the support, farmers looking out for each other. Say, for instance, they've got that Nip the Bud campaign at the moment for, it's so important, for
Just to
people with
identify
early
cancer
stages cancer. Yeah. He was telling horrific stories that day of, chaps that were cutting out their own melanomas and things because they didn't have the time and support to go to the hospital, and or hospital also waiting times were so long to get stuff sorted out, or pulling out their own teeth because they didn't want to take time off the farm to go.
We couldn't take
Or couldn't get an appointment. And so therefore having that campaign is really, really important. And also, the looking after the mental health side of things as well. That wonderful charity in Herefordshire as well that looks after mental health. I can't remember off the top of my head what it's called now, but it is, it's supported by Prince of Wales as well. But it's such an important charity to look after. It's a lonely old life, sitting on a tractor half the day if you're an arable farmer especially, or hill farmer up in Wales or somewhere like that, where you're totally isolated, making lots of big life decisions on your own. And I think it's really important that people do look out for each other. And I hope that's something that maybe young farmers is doing, and saying, you're going to be in this together, so stick together as a group.
I think maybe there's more of an expectation.
Be collaborative.
But the younger generation coming through, they are a little softer around the edges, I suppose, and more aware of
very much so
your feelings and perceptions. So they're more questioning.
Whenever I meet a prospective new client and they're saying, oh, I'm up against it, I've got this and I'm juggling so much, but I'd like some help, or somebody works in rural business, not necessarily just a farmer, but they might, have a unit on a farm that's got a business that I also support. Those type of people, and I can see how busy they are. Sometimes I have to meet them at 6, 7 o'clock in the evening because they haven't got time in the day to have a daytime meeting with me. And I'll always ask the question, what do you do for you? Because I learnt the hard way. I had a stroke in the middle of lockdown. Lucky enough, I haven't got many long-term effects from that. But what it makes you do is look at life in a different way. And as tough as life is, and you're up against financial constraints and family pressure, juggling everything, you've always got to do something just for you. And that will avoid burnout. It obviously, hopefully improve your own health, but also just, look after what you've got, because if you don't, then you've only got one life. And cold water swimming is my passion.
I was going to say, before we started the recording, you said that you just changed out of a load of wet clothes. What were you up to this morning?
Oh, I was swimming in an aquifer-filled lake this morning. One of my clients has just invested in an 8-person sauna, and there's going to be adding that into his diversified enterprise. And regularly anyway, once a week, I'll go down to Southsea and I'll swim. but this morning it was very nice to be actually swimming in a very close proximity to home and not have to commute too
In a
far and
lake.
back and forth in the lake.
Yeah.
And it was spectacular. I had
Was it?
ducks in the water, there were geese. We saw a moorhen's nest on the banks as we were swimming. So to get into nature in that way, first thing on a Monday morning, was absolutely spectacular. And I don't care how busy everybody is, you have to find an hour for yourself, even if it's once a week, to do something like that for you. And it gives me that buzz and that energy that I'm almost hyper focused for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm a big advocate for stuff like that, and just providing yourself with that little bit of time.
It's funny because we talk about, having an hour for yourself, some me time.
Mm,
But one of the challenges is too much me time because of the isolation. So,
mm,
and I sort of empathise with that, working from home.
mm,
And we all went through it during lockdown, etc. But that probably had more of an effect on me than anything, just being
mm-hmm.
disconnected physically from people I
Yes.
was working with. So I wonder if in the farming community, what exists to bring farmers together, because it previously it would have been a lot more around the markets and the stock
Yeah, it was.
markets
Yeah, very much so.
to
And I think, markets still have their place. If you're going to market on a regular basis, there are less and less of them now,
yeah.
unfortunately. But back in, I think it was March time, I went to a farmer's breakfast that was organised over in a barn in West Sussex. It was primarily organised by Rabbi, a farming charity, and
Charity. Yeah.
and the FCN, and it was all locally produced, proper farmers' breakfast. And money donated that day went straight to the charity. So all of the produce was donated, and a few of the ladies that were producing the breakfast were all volunteering their time. And that was a wonderful thing. I was sat on tables with, multi-generational farmers all getting together for a lovely breakfast. It was probably, over the course of the morning, there was probably 150 farmers there from around the local area, and that was sort of like Petworth, Pulborough area.
Uh-huh.
And it's a wonderful thing for them all to get together and just chew the fat, so to speak. And
Yeah.
things like that. You've obviously got other networks that are around. I don't know so many in Hampshire, but young farmers certainly, to a certain age point.
Mm.
But I don't know. I think there should be more of that. I really do.
Again, the
But it's
changes
time.
that there's the time factor, but I'm thinking the changes that we've seen in farming in rural communities, you can't ignore the fact that the meeting point, the pub, has
Yes.
declined
Yeah, it has.
over
Yeah.
the years as well.
Yeah.
So it's almost like this
Yeah.
perfect storm of
Yeah. Even in our
creating.
own village, we're down to one pub. We used to have two. We've got a really big community event this weekend in our village. We've got our own flower festival for the first time in, like, I don't know how many, it was 2012 the last time it happened. And I'm very much involved with that. I've volunteered all my time to do the marketing and social media for that. And it's a wonderful thing to bring. We've got 23 displays of all the different communities within the village, everything from the farmers. They're going to have their big archway going in.
Uh-huh.
I'm very excited about that. There's all sorts of things being conjured up, and then different community groups within the village, like beekeepers, garden club, and all those rural groups that we have within our
Yeah.
village, which is really important. And it'll be just lovely to see, all those groups within the rural community getting together.
Yeah. I think that's the most important part of it. It does, moving up here has just opened my eyes to where it exists and where it's lacking. Probably because I moved up here on my own and because my work situation changed. So I lost some connection with some people and a sense of where I belonged, if you like. But,
Yep.
and so it makes you just more hyper aware of where is that sense of community going to come from, without joining the WI, which I don't think they'd let me in.
You're not a good baker.
No. But as I say, the decline in rural pubs. So once you strip that away, this village again has got nothing, no pub anymore. Did have, so my nearest is 3 miles away, and if I wanted to go a bit further, 3 miles is about the sort of limit to make it home if you're perhaps borderline, whether you
Yeah.
should. But to go any further afield is a stretch. So I was there yesterday afternoon, actually, and I did get chatting to someone who picked up on what I was saying to a friend and then started to regale me of stories of when his dad was a farmer and what they did and where it went and stuff like that. And so we whiled away half an hour nattering about that. And, and it's that ability to sit and talk about something and nothing with people, that release that's missing.
Yeah, I think it is. And I think, isolation like that is so cruel, because there are many people that I meet, even out for a dog walk in the village, when I get a screen break in the afternoons and I go out and I meet somebody, and that might be their only conversation they've had all week. And I think it's really sad, really sad. So I always make time to have a chat with somebody, not necessarily young or old. Sometimes if you're working on your own from home and you go out for a walk, okay, you might have had 3 Teams calls, but you want to speak to a human being when you go out for a dog walk, which is, I think, really important. And it's the same with farmers and any other rural business, really. There is that level of isolation, which is quite worrying, really.
I keep thinking about it, thinking what's the solution, and you can't force it on people. You can't.
No, it's not necessarily that they sit around even talking about farming. The couple of tables that I sat on that morning over in Sussex, farming wasn't really a discussion. They were just talking about life and families and health.
That's it, isn't it? Problem shared
it's
is a problem half.
it's just literally talking life. And I think that is missing from a lot of rural communities. And I think now you're seeing a lot of schools also shutting down in villages where there's not enough numbers. So those children are going to be disconnected from the get-go, aren't they? Because they're not going to be educated locally either. So they won't have their sense of community even from a young age. And I do think rural isolation is quite a big problem.
The more people talk about it on things like this, silly things like this,
yes,
trying to be optimistic about it, and I am actually.
Yeah.
Although I've come into this later in my career, I'm excited by it, and the people that I'm meeting, make me feel optimistic about the industry. Also, because if I think about going back to what I used to do, yes, there was community insofar as working in an office with colleagues around you and the trench humour that you had to put up with the bullshit on a daily basis. That wasn't all bad. I loved, there are parts of office life that I absolutely loved, but it also got to a point where I thought I just can't paint the smile on anymore.
No, exactly. And I think that's why I feel so passionate about what I do. And I love the variety of all the different businesses that I have become involved with since, working for myself, that I feel I've got a lot to give because I've got life experience. I'm not a young thing, I've got life behind me, a lot of different jobs that I've had across different industries. And I believe all of those skills can be transferred into helping people transform what they have and making the best of what they've got. Because even if they have been running a diversified enterprise for some time, it's always good to tweak and improve. It's almost like offering a bit of a rural business MOT, and just saying, right, this is where we're at, but we could get a little bit better. We could fine tune this to get the most out of it.
Super. And where can people find you?
So I've got a website, which is smartwavesupport.co.uk, and also got an Instagram page at Smartwave Support, and I'm on LinkedIn as well, Ali Mitchell.
Good. It's lovely to meet you finally. Thanks so much for coming along. And
pleasure.
Although listeners to this won't be able to see what I can see, the view behind you is stunning. I'm imagining that is right in the Meon Valley.
Yeah, that's the top of the view from Park Hill, which is behind the church in East Meon, which if on a clear day you can see right down to the coast. It's insane. It's so beautiful.
Amazing. Great stuff. Thanks a lot, Ali. And we'll catch up soon.
Yeah, take care.
Cheers. Bye. I really enjoyed my chat with Ali. For me, it reinforced that the path to working in agriculture can come from many different life experiences, and that skills learned in other job roles are completely transferable, whatever stage of life you find yourself at. If you'd like to get in touch with Ali, I've posted all the details in the show notes. Go check it out. It's okay to have a rethink about where you're headed, what makes sense, and what suits the stage of life you find yourself in. I've done exactly that in the last 12 months, and it's why you're listening to this now. As you'll have heard, I've also been talking to people in agriculture who've recently taken steps to work on how they get the best from themselves or from their business, engaging with someone else in the industry for an independent view. Coming up this Wednesday is the second episode in my collaboration with Toucan Mentoring. As I continue to meet some of the mentoring participants to hear their stories, it's fascinating to hear how they find their eureka moment, or in the case of Abby, her mentor's faith in her was the push she needed to make a significant change. Here's what she had to say about it.
Because we did discuss quite a lot of different things and quite sort of, deep breath, I need to be honest here things, which I'm like, I probably wouldn't discuss some of that with my friends because it is quite a vulnerable thing that I'm talking about. And like the one thing, like I have done a massive shift change in what sector I'm now working in, courtesy of Ben, because he gave me the kick up the arse to go and do it. I am still doing a bit with the consultancy company that I was before with dairy, but very much pushing away from that now. And for a long time, I knew I needed to do that and I knew I needed to have that conversation.
Yeah.
But in such a short space of time, Ben managed to get me from, I don't know how I'm going to cope, to just get on and do it. Put your big girl pants on. We'll get there. And actually, as a result of it, and I'm going to say, Ben, this is down to you. I've now got a job with the National Sheep Association because I actually put myself forward and was like, what's the worst that can happen?
Yeah.
Well, I'll counter. I didn't fill the application form out and go and do it. So I'd argue it was very much down to you. There was a conversation that was had.
50-50.
Tune in this Wednesday to hear Abby and Ben talk about the experience they shared. If you're enjoying the conversations, I'd love to hear from you. Drop me a comment or rate the show. And don't forget to subscribe so as not to miss new releases. Well, thanks as always for listening. And if it is past your bedtime, perhaps it's time to turn in. Until next time.